Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing Matlock Season 1, Episode 12. So before I get in the review, I just want to thank everybody who likes and watches my videos, subscribes to my channel, leaves me comments. Thank you so much. I read all my comments. So getting into this episode with Matlock, right? They left off in the previous episode, or even a couple episodes, about a conversation Maddie and her husband Edwin have about finding Alfie's father. So, in the very first scene of the show, you kind of see Maddie finding out that Edwin has the email and kind of yelling at him, and it was Edwin having a nightmare, and he kind of wakes up, and Maddie's like, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, nothing. So you can tell he's kind of struggling with it, right? Because we found out at the end of the last episode he basically lied to Maddie and was like, oh, I don't have the email anymore. But he does. I think he's still contemplating what to do with it, because I don't think he's responded to it. I just am not really sure why he hid it. So I think there's some, either resentment or some secret or something that Edwin feels that he doesn't want to communicate with Maddie, which is kind of new conflict, right? Because they've always kind of been a team. We've seen them kind of spat a little bit about Olympia because she's always defending Olympia. But I mean, this is like a flat out lie that he's keeping from Maddie, which we've never really seen yet. So that's how it starts out, him having this nightmare of Maddie, like, I know you lied to me. Um, and then, they change the subject and they talk about the marketing doc from Albrexa, and they kind of, but, it seems like Edwin's a little rattled and Maddie notices it, right? Because she notices everything. So that comes into play later in the episode, but it was kind of, the first scene being a nightmare, and you kind of see Maddie yelling at Edwin. So that was interesting. And then, Maddie always has some up her sleeve. So she goes to security and basically tells them she lost her purse, which we saw from that scene in the kitchen, right after that, she leaves it home on purpose. So she's getting into the security office and, playing the, dumb old lady play. She's not dumb by any means, but it's kind of like what I always say, like, play dumb. If you want to find out information from somebody, play dumb, because then they're going to be like, oh, of course you don't know, and they're going to rattle everything off to you. So yes, I've done that in the past too. Like, okay, you don't think I'm very smart. I'm just going to play dumb and you're going to tell me everything I want to know. So I kind of understand when she does that. So she's playing it up to, I don't know what I'm talking about with technology. I must have lost my purse. But it worked. She got into talk to the head of security. He's showing her that the little key card, you can see where they were. You can see every room they were in the building and what time they punched into the different rooms. So she's finding out a lot. So he's like, yeah, you just scan their card and you enter in the date, and then boom, you can see a report. But it shows a picture of the badge. So it's not like Maddie could just, take Julian's badge or somebody else's. Like, it shows a clear picture of whose badge you just scanned. However, we learned some critical information, right? Because Maddie wants to get into that document room, and now she's kind of learning how to do it. So again, Maddie being brilliant. I loved that. She literally can find out if Jillian was in the document room on that date. She just has to get in there, which we see in the preview for next week, which I'll get into in a minute, which is definitely looking cool. Now, I will talk a little bit about Sarah and Billy, because obviously, Sarah kind of had that meltdown because she went after Maddie. And then, of course, Maddie being two steps ahead of everybody. And then Sarah apologizes. So she's in this mentor role with Olympia, which has a couple kind of, comic relief moments with her just not realizing that she's overstepping, right? Because she wants to be mentored by Olympia. So there's a couple scenes where you're like, yeah, Sarah, you shouldn't have said that. But she's just so eager to learn, you know. Like I said, I love Sarah. I love everybody in the show. They're such great characters, and the actors and actresses play them wonderfully. But, you know, there is some comic relief there. And basically, the whole episode, Sarah is apologizing to Billy and like trying to be friends with him again. And Billy's kind of been like, okay, look, you know, I've always defended you, I've always helped you, and you've basically always treated me like dirt. So I'm kind of done with you. You know, I can be better on my own. I don't need you, and I'm gonna speak up for myself. So I'm kind of like, go Billy, right? Because I like Sarah and I like Billy, but you can't diss somebody for standing up for themselves. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I thought that was great for Billy. I'm sorry for Sarah, but you got to stand up for yourself. So awesome, Billy. And they kind of patch it up at the end of the episode. You know, they Sarah basically says, look, you know, you're an important relationship in my life, you know. And she kind of has that heart to heart with Billy, and Billy gives in, you know, and accepts it, and they become friends again. So I do like that. So you see that a little bit throughout the episode. And like I say, the mentoring with Olympia has his comic relief, which I'm kind of glad, because this case was very serious, and for any parent, it can be heart wrenching because it's a child custody case. And even if you've never been divorced or you've never been in a broken home yourself growing up, I mean, you know somebody who has, right? You've got a friend or somebody else in your family that's had a broken home or had to deal with an ex-husband or an ex-wife with, you know, with child support, child custody, where it gets ugly. Unfortunately, that's very common, right? Because the spouse wants to get mad at the other spouse, and the child is kind of in the middle. I'm gonna, you know, punish the child, or say bad things about the other spouse to the child, right? So, I mean, it can be very difficult for everybody involved, child included. So, this involves a 7-year-old boy. And it seems like he's got a little bit of anxiety. So, you know, he gets intense, and he, you know what I mean, he has certain things that helps calm him down. So that doesn't help the situation at all, the fact that his parents are fighting. But it's it's just, I'm a parent, so this just hits me hard anytime I see children struggling and parents going through this, because I see both sides. You know, I can see it from the child side, I can see it from the parent side. It's just difficult. So keep in mind, Olympia is kind of going full force on Julian about their forensic accounting. I don't trust you. Remember, she still thinks the tracking pen listening device came from Julian. So she still doesn't trust him. You know, he cheated on her with Shay, somebody they both work with. So, I mean, she's kind of like, I'm ready to, you know, go full on this divorce. So she's defending this lady. Her ex-husband didn't pay child support, and he has the money. He's a very powerful man, and you know, he is basically kind of going back. Like, she's saying, hey, you need to pay me child support, goes to Olympia, and Olympia's like, he has the money. We have to take him to court to get this money, right? And her dad is actually in Mexico, and he's really sick. Like, you find out halfway through the episode, he's actually dying, and he wants to see his grandson. And of course, you know, she wants to see her dad. I mean, who wouldn't? You're in the, you know, you're in California or wherever they are, and you know, your dad is in Mexico, basically sick to the point where he's dying, and you want to see him, and you want to bring your grandson. And at one point she does try to go to Mexico on her days, because remember, they've had custody on certain days, you know, each parent has the child. But the whole back and forth, and listening to them argue and bicker has really been hard for this child. And I think that just adds to all his anxiety, right? Of like, okay, you know, I don't like it when they argue. But it's just sad the way it goes out in court. So Olympia is trying to defend him, and she actually, you know, he's like, well, no, I'm not going to give you money. And Olympia actually finds out he's got like $3 million in some Swiss bank account. So she brings that up, and the husband husband, the ex-husband, is like, oh, well, you wanted to see your dad in Mexico. I'm not going to allow you to go. And I'm thinking, how can he be so powerful not to let his ex-wife leave? But apparently he's like very, powerful but controlling. So, you find out she's kind of threatened by her ex husband. She just wants what's best for her 7-year old, but she is bickering a lot with him, right? Because she feels like he's spying on her. At one point, they actually went to her house to see if he had any bugs in the house. Because I was mentioning she actually does try to take her son to Mexico to see her dad. And he finds out, catches her at the airport, and then obviously that's terrible for the custody case, right? Anytime you're seen leaving the country with your child in the middle of a case, it's looking like kidnapping your own child, which isn't what she was trying to do. She was like, it was on my days. I was going to have him back. I was just going to go to Mexico for a couple of days on my days and have him back. But how did he know? So that's why they were like, maybe he's bugging the house. So they find out that the neighbor is very snooty, and very nosy, I guess I should say. Not necessarily snooty, but nosy, like a busybody in the neighborhood. They have a neighborhood watch, and there's a camera in one of her flowers. The ex-husband paid her to spy on his ex-wife and tell her what's going on. So that's how they knew they were on their way to Mexico. But again, it looks really bad in the courts. So before it got all nasty, at the very beginning, when she was like, look, we know you've got the money, Jillian decides to come in at the last minute and represent the ex-husband. So here you have Jillian, and Olympia, who are going through their own pretty nasty divorce. And the judge sees it and he's like, look, you need to talk to your clients, right? Because as long as your clients are okay with it, I don't need more drama, and of course the clients are okay, so they proceed. And at one point they argue so much in front of the judge, and Olympia actually brings up the pen, like, look what you did with the pen. And Julian's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what your pen you're talking about. So like the judge is like, okay, I hold you both in contempt. You're going to jail. So I'm just like, wow, okay, what's gonna happen now, right? So it kind of blew up because obviously Jillian doesn't know about the pin. That pissed off Olympia because Olympia thinks he's lying. So they're sitting in the jail cell together. And I'm thinking, okay, who's going to do the rest of the case, right? Because in the midst of Sarah not really having anybody, right? Her girlfriend kind of broke up with her, or they're taking a break or something. And Shay's saying to back off Maddie and isn't really a part of the law from day to day, so Sarah hasn't talking to her. And then she's kind of on the outs with Billy and Maddie, and Olympia's the mentor. But so to make any matters worse, and Sarah's going through all this, the ex-husband, he brings in a young lawyer, and that was kind of Sarah's nemesis when they were in law school. So that doesn't make any matters better, right? So they have a couple little, jabs, then there's a little side story there. So, I'm like, okay, is it going to be Sarah against her nemesis, since now they're both in jail for contempt? Like, this is going to be good. But it doesn't. At one point, the ex-wife gets so upset because she's like, look, he's spying on me. He knows I tried to go to Mexico. Like, I'm not going to win. And she like barricades herself in an office with her son at the law firm. So the judge and everybody's waiting for this trial to work, to go through, and she's not there. So Maddie kind of talks to her and is like, this isn't good. We got to get you to the courthouse, and kind of pleads with her and gets her there. And then they get there, Maddie and she get there, her get there, and the lawyers are gone. And the judge is like, yeah, they're in contempt. Go get the lawyers out. And so Maddie's like, whoa, okay. So they kind of talk in the jail cell. And you actually find out something kind of sad about Jillian, because Olympia was like, I can't believe I'm in a cell. Like, I can't believe this, right? Especially as a mother. And I want to just look at my notes here, because I know Olympia says to Jillian, like, I know this is hard to watch. Bruno, which is the ex-husband, who's kind of powerful and kind of controlling. But anyways, he's like, I know it's hard to see Bruno fight for his son, like your dad should have fought for you. So we find out a little bit more information into Jillian's childhood. So apparently something happened with Senior. I mean, obviously that's his dad, and he's in the same law firm, so obviously they made up. But apparently when they were younger there must have been some custody battle, and Senior didn't even fight for Jillian, because that's why he said, I know this must be hard, because in the midst of her fighting for the custody of the money, like, hey, my ex-husband isn't paying my custody child support, he's not paying my child support, and then Olympia looked into his finances and says, oh, he's got $3 million in a Swiss fund, he should be paying child support, but now we're going to up it because he obviously has money. Like, he's saying he doesn't have money and that's why he couldn't pay, but we found all this hidden money. So that pissed off Bruno, the ex-husband, and in return he said, I'm going to get full custody of the child. So that like totally upset the ex-wife. Olympia's like, it's okay, and she's like, I can't lose my son. I just wanted the money, and you said he had hidden money, and now he's pissed off, and now he's fighting for full custody. So that kind of added to why she barricaded herself, because once he proved she tried to leave with her son to Mexico, that looks really bad in court, and he's wanting full custody. So she kind of panicked and was like, I can't lose my son, so I can control the right now, so I'm going to stay in this room and I'm going to lock us in and I'm going to be with my son. So I I think what's sad is, no, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Bruno was making her look like she was doing all these terrible things when really she was going to take her son to Mexico because her dad is dying and asked to see his grandson and his daughter. Um, but she's like desperate. This is her son. This is her everything. I can relate. I'm a parent. I have a little boy. I can't even imagine being in that situation. No, you shouldn't barricade yourself. And I'm sure people are going to watch this and go, well, that's stupid. You shouldn't do that. But you can't judge unless you're in that situation. Is it a good thing to barricade your son in a law firm office? No. Would I recommend that? No. But do I relate to her in that moment? Remember, this is in the moment of her thinking, she's going to lose him for everything, and she just wants those last couple minutes with him. So I understand. I would not do that. But again, judge free zone on my channel. I don't judge people. I try to understand what they were thinking, what they were going through at that moment. So again, judge free zone. I don't judge her. I just try to understand where she's coming from. And I think that must have been terrible to think that way, right? Because you don't want to lose your son, especially knowing that your ex-husband has a temper, that he's controlling, you know what I mean? So, I mean, at that point, she thought she was losing everything. She can't be with her father, and so I'm glad Maddie was able to talk to her because she needed to get out of the room. She needed to get to court because if she missed the court date and didn't show up, that was almost a guarantee win for Bruno. So she had to at least show up. So I'm glad Maddie got her to show up. In the end, I said that the two lawyers were talking in the jail cell, Jillian and Olympia, and they had that heart to heart. Like, I know this is hard for you being a mom. And then, Olympia was like, it is hard for me, but I know it's hard for you too, because your client is fighting for a son. Senior didn't fight for you. So, like I said, we get a glimpse in that. I want to see a little bit more of that in the future, because I think that's going to show us how Julian is the way he is. Maybe he did hide those, Welbrexia documents. Maybe since that was such a long time ago, when he first met Olympia, and while they were dating and got to know each other, they all kind of met on that case. Maybe he was trying to prove something to his dad. Maybe he hid the documents but didn't know what the documents were. Like, maybe he was just a little gopher, you know what I'm saying? Maybe Jillian isn't the big monster that we think, that he purposely hid the documents. Me personally, I still think if there's any monster or evil person in the show, it's Senior, because there's just something about him that we've seen him do in past cases. I just don't like him. So I don't want to think that Julian, did this, and purposely did that. I think maybe if you find out he did hid the documents, or hide the documents, or destroy the documents, he was just taking orders from Senior. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing. I could be 100% wrong. He could be, an evil person and just really good actor at pretending like he's not. But I tend to think, Olympia saw that softer side of Jillian, and I hope it's not Olympia or Jillian because I already am kind of, thinking that it was all senior. But we will see. I mean, they got renewed for a second season, yay! So I'm assuming this side story of Wellbrecht's and who hid the documents is going to continue. Now, one thing that I didn't mention that was pretty heavy in this case as well was the flashbacks that Maddie had of getting custody of her grandson Alfie. Now, this really hit me too, because we know Alfie is what, an middle school, maybe, I think. I don't think he's in high school yet. But all we really know is that he lives with Maddie and Edwin, his grandparents, and that his mom was an addict and overdosed on the opioids that, well, Braxa could have taken off the market 10 years ago and didn't, right? That's all we really know. We don't know how old Alfie was. Well, I guess 10 years ago, Alfie was, if he's 12 or 13, I guess we could figure he was small. But at the same time, like, we really don't know how that played out. I just assume, the daughter overdosed and the grandparents got custody after the death. So we got to see, because that's not the case. And I just assumed that. Nothing on the show really told us that. I just assumed that's why they have custody of Alfie. But it turns out, no, Maddie actually went after custody once she found out that her daughter Ellie was still using and had an infant. Alfie got burned 18 months old, so a year and a half he get burned on a tea kettle, and Maddie actually testified in court at a custody hearing to, kind of strip Ellie of her parental rights as the mother of the child and award them to the grandparents because she was an addict. So that was hard to watch because Maddie is seeing those flashbacks and you can see the daughter like, Mom, why are you doing this? And then she looks at Edwin because Maddie's on the stand like, Dad, why are you letting her do this? Like, say something. You can't take my child away. So it was hard to watch those flashbacks. So throughout this whole episode, you see Maddie and Olympia go through, this custody case, child custody or child support custody case that turned into full custody when Bruno basically said, no, I'm going to fight for full custody now. You see these flashbacks with Maddie going through it with her own daughter. And you can kind of see Edwin's face because this pulling custody away from her daughter and get full custody of Alfie as an infant, you could even tell through the flashbacks, through Maddie's eyes. It was really Maddie who was doing it. Edwin was kind of the quiet dad, supporting Maddie, but Maddie was the one kind of saying, I'm going full force to strip the rights. So I can't even imagine, obviously I'm a parent, but I can't imagine my child having a child and then me fighting my daughter in court for my grandson's custody. Like, that's gotta be hard, right? So we found out a little bit more about Maddie too, right? Because we found out that Maddie actually stripped her daughter of her rights to her son and took full custody of her. And then shortly after that, she overdosed. So, we find out in the end, not a nightmare. We find in the end, Maddie does confront Edwin. Maddie does find the email in real life, because I know the beginning of the episode, it was a nightmare. But in real life, Maddie does confront Edwin at the end. And, she basically says, like, why'd you keep this from me? And she's pushing him. And Edwin basically says, like, and Maddie's like, do you blame me for Ellie's death? And Edwin goes, yeah, sometimes I do. Because he feels like Maddie pushed too hard to get custody of Alfie, and that might have pushed Ellie over the edge, and then she overdosed shortly after that. So Maddie is carrying this burden of, her daughter dying, and even the burden 10 years ago when she fought for custody of her grandson over her own daughter who's the mother of this child. And then to find out now, 10 years later, that Edwin admits, like, yeah, I do sometimes blame you for my daughter's death because I feel like you pushed too hard to get Alfie. But Maddie feels like, the burn on his arm at 18 months is because she was using and that he wasn't safe and she was afraid for Alfie's life. So I feel like in hindsight, as parents, and even family members, even friends, even coworkers, even work situations, you regret things that you say, you regret things that you do. Even something comical like the company holiday party where you always feel like, yeah, I drank too much at the Christmas party and I said this to my coworker or boss. You always have incidences in your life where you regret what you say or what you do and you relive them. It's like our mind can't help but relive it. We're harder on ourselves than other people are on us normally, typically. So, Maddie's been struggling with this anyways. So to have these flashbacks during this custody case and probably having some regret of her own. And now Edwin, her support, her loving husband, is saying, yeah, sometimes I do blame you for my only daughter's death, to save the grandson. And Maddie's like, I thought, I was doing the right thing, but it was still hard. It was still hard. I think the whole episode was hard. If you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a guardian, it's just hard to watch that, to watch the actual case unfold and then hear that, Senior didn't fight for Jillian. Maybe that's why they have that strained relationship or the way they have their relationship, right? And then to hear and see the flashbacks of Maddie and her daughter Ellie and Alfie and that custody battle. So this was a real heavy episode. That's why I was saying, at the beginning, I liked the scenes with Sarah and Billy and Sarah and Olympia mentoring because there was a little bit of comic relief because this was kind of on the heavy, especially as a parent. So how it ends is while they're in jail, kind of talking it out, they kind of say, look, I don't want to fight anymore. Like, can we start over? And then Jillian's like, look, if you want my financials, I'll give you everything. Like, I'm not trying to hide anything from you. And I think they had that heart to heart. And I think Olympia was like, you're willing to give me everything. It's not about money. It's about trust, right? But she realized like he's willing to give me everything that I asked now. I wanted a finance, or forensic accounting that, and he's willing to tell me everything. So they kind of start fresh, which is probably not going to be good for Maddie, right? Because she wanted that forensic accounting. But now I think she's on a separate path now with trying to get into the document room since they think it's Jillian and prove that he's in there. But, that was one of the good things that came out since they were both in contempt of court and were in jail cell together. They were like, they got the husband and the ex-husband and the wife to, or ex-wife to come up with an agreement. Like, look, 50-50 custody. This is a good financial agreement, where everybody wins. And it was interesting because Olympia even said, she even said to the couple, she said, my dad told me this a long time ago, and I never really understood it until today, which is crazy because, your parents tell you these things and you're like, yeah, yeah, I know what that means. But now she kind of lived it in the jail cell with her conversation with Jill. And she said, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And she was like, you need to choose your child because while they're having this conversation, they're seeing a live video of their son with the social worker, and she's observing him because when they're that young, they have to be observed. You can't really just flat out with questions, interrogate, I guess is the word I'm looking to say with questions. So, that's when Olympia was like, choose your kid, choose to be happy. You're not right. You're not right. Choose happy. Don't choose to be right. This is the great agreement. You need to choose your son. And he's saying to the social work, I don't like when my parents argue. You know what I mean? So I think they both saw that. So and they both signed the agreement and, that was the happy ending for that case, right? Nobody really won. And Jillian and Olympia kind of had their falling out where they kind of talked and, they'll probably still get divorced. Who knows? At least it won't be so nasty. And Another comic relief was they had a scene with Olympia and Elijah, who I love. He's such a great actor. So I mean, there was a couple little scenes there to kind of lighten up the episode, but I definitely think it was heavy. I liked how she ended it. You can be right or you can be happy. So I definitely like that. And then the preview for next week is kind of, I'm excited about, because remember I told you the beginning of that key card, oh, I lost my purse. And she was talking to head of security just to see how everything worked. So next week she brings Alfie into the law firm. And I think it's to distract them to get into the document room, because you see a scene with Alfie making a mess, or, messing something up. So I think he was more of a distraction, but I definitely think that's interesting. I love Alfie. I love the way he interacts with Maddie. So I know there's a plan if Maddie's come in, bringing Alfie into the law firm. So that is definitely interesting for next week. So I know I kind of had a long review on this one, but it was a lot to take in. Ultimately, when children are involved, you got to choose your child. You want to choose happy. You don't have to be right, but you have to see the impact it's having on the child. And I think so many parents don't do that. You don't want to talk bad about the other spouse to your kids, because they're going to grow up remembering that, and that's never good, right? Find a girlfriend, find a friend, find a church, find a counseling group, find a support group, but don't confide in your 5-year old, 10-year old, 15-year old about everything that was terrible from your spouse, because that's their dad, that's their mom. So, just keep that in mind, because I see that happen a lot. But I hope you enjoyed my review, and I will see you next week. Bye.